why are you sad? They give you 4 attempts at this exam for a reason. I remember my first PLAB 2 attempt was in April and it didn't go well. And oh my goodness, I was shattered. I panicked. Just felt like, oh my gosh, I've wasted money. And I remember that was my worst done station. The thing started talking and started saying, oh, doctor, I don't feel too good. And there's a nurse there and the examiner. I went in hard, like no distractions, no. So sometimes it can get very lonely, like Uganda tabula, like bikole chigwe. It was a very depressing process, to be honest, because you get rejection after rejection. It starts, and then when we're like 5-7 minutes in, I join the room, the network cuts. And by the time I joined the meeting, they had left. After like an hour of crying, I was like, you know what? Sivida, wow. And they said that they couldn't verify that it was the original because it was laminated. Then COVID hit the rest of the world and they stopped WAST recruitment. And there I was once again, like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And now me who doesn't have experience. Am I going to get a job?
Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Sissy if you're new here, and welcome back if you're a returning subscriber. In this video, I'm so excited to be bringing for you Shamim. Shamim is a Ugandan medical doctor working in the UK. I've mentioned before that sometimes it's like we're like somehow unicorns, like we don't exist, but actually I wanted to show you guys that actually there's a lot of Ugandan medical doctors in the UK. It's just that maybe we are off busy living our lives. People are out there traveling, living their best lives. Shamim will tell us more. We don't have time to be talking about, I guess, what we are doing. Also, I think sometimes people don't want to say so much about maybe the good things that's going on in their lives for fear of showing that we're bragging or we're showing off. No, they're not. It's not all suffering, because a lot of times I think most of the negative things go out there. People will talk about all the negatives. Actually, it's not all that bad. Welcome, Shamim. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you, Sissy. Thanks for having me. Like you already introduced me, I'm Shamim, and I'm a Ugandan medical doctor in the UK.
I wanted Shamim to first start by telling us her journey to the UK. I think what's interesting about it is that you did not study in Uganda, but you studied in China. And I actually get that as a commonly asked question in comments or even DMs. People who studied in other universities, how can they convert to come to the UK? Do they have to go back to their home countries? So yeah, for you, what was your experience? First of all, when did you graduate?
I graduated in 2018.
So that's exactly.
So it's going to be 5 years.
So you're going to start paying the increased GMC fee.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Welcome to our world.
Myself.
Welcome to our world. Make sure you do claim that on tax relief, HMRC.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So your new graduate days are over. So you graduated in 2018, and then what happened? Did you work in China? What happened next?
From my medical degree, the final year of med school was clinical, like purely clinical, and it was an internship. And that's just how the university that I went to structured it. So technically 2017 to 2018, I was working, but it was an unpaid internship and we were still treated like students. But I guess the beauty of it is that at the end we got an internship certificate, which GMC recognized as an F1 equivalent. So I didn't have to prove a pattern of internship or whatever. Like I just showed, I just presented my medical degree and the internship certificate. And for the most part, my registration went kind of straightforward in terms of like proving, like showing my competencies and degree. So after graduation in July of 2018, I did IELTS. I think I did it like twice. I think. I don't remember. It's a bit hazy, but I remember it was more than one attempt.
Was it the writing that was the problem?
It was the writing. It's always the writing.
Always the writing.
Yeah, so thankfully in September, end of September, that's when I finally got a 7, I think 7.5 in writing. And then at that point, the only place that still had seats open for PLAB 1 was within the UK. And thankfully at that time I had a valid visit visa. I had been visiting with my mom like a couple of years before, so I still had a valid visa. So she was just like, just book and go do the exam. And I felt really unprepared, and I felt like I was really stressed out because I just felt like after graduation I wanted like a couple of months to just sit and breathe, and just because internship had also been very stressful.
Yeah.
But my mom was like, no, the knowledge is still fresh in your mind. Just bikole chigwe. I was like, what do you mean chigwe? Like, chigwe, how I know, you know? But yeah, I just went ahead and did IELTS and booked PLAB 1. And I did PLAB 1 in November. Yeah, November.
Of
And
2018.
November of 2018.
Wow, so much stuff happened in 2018 for you, eh?
Yeah. And then took a bit of a break, prepping for PLAB 2 Academy and all that jazz. And then I remember my first PLAB 2 attempt was in April, and it didn't go well.
Oh no.
Yeah, it didn't go well. And oh my goodness, I was shattered because I had this timeline in my mind, because after passing PLAB 1, it gave me a lot of gas. I was like, okay, I can do this. I can actually do this. I know something. I have a bit of knowledge. But I think because I was lacking a bit in, I don't know, I think there's something that you get when you've done like active clinical practice. There's a confidence that it gives you. And I think I didn't have that the first time round. I think I remember being really nervous, and the Simman station also threw me off. I panicked.
Okay.
It started, the thing started talking and started saying, "Oh, doctor, I don't feel too good." And there's a nurse there, and the examiner
No. Yes,
and the
actually.
examiner was in the corner, and he looked like he had this tough look on his face. And I think he saw how panicked I was, and he had this, like, you know, when somebody looks at you with this thing of, what are you doing? And that made me panic even more. And I remember that was my worst done station when the
Do you
results
think that
came out.
do you think that threw you off for the rest of the following
Oh,
station?
definitely. Yeah, it definitely did. Because it, like, I just felt like, oh gosh, I've bombed that. I'm sure I've just, yeah, my confidence was already a bit low. And then after that, I was just like, "Ah, let me just try." But my hopes went high. But I was just like, "Ah, you never know. I don't know. Maybe miracles still happen. Maybe I can still pass." But it didn't turn out great. And I was really, it really shattered me. Like, because I felt like, oh my gosh, spent so money on this. Like my mom she was helping me throughout this whole process, and just felt like, oh my gosh, I've wasted money. Because I think the PLAB 2 is like what, £800? Yeah. So I just remember thinking, oh my God, I have just wasted £800, and also the money for the academy and all.
Which
I,
academy did you go to? Did you go to an academy the
I
first time?
did. I had to.
Yeah,
So the first time round, I went to an academy that shall
academy.
remain
Uh-huh.
unnamed,
Yes.
which was the biggest mistake, because their approach and the way the main person taught, it just no, it just didn't
Didn't
work out
work
for
for
me.
you. Mm.
Yeah, it didn't work for me personally.
Mm.
Of course, there are people who passed
Which
after
is why
going
we're
to
not
that
naming,
academy.
which is why we're not naming the academy, because a
Yeah,
particular academy, the approach didn't work for you.
yeah, yeah. In my self-pity and wallowing, my mom was just like, why are you sad? They give you 4 attempts at this exam for a reason." Like, my mom just always has this like positive spin on things. She's just like, no, this is not the end. Like, you give it another try. And for me at that time, I was just like, no, mommy, I don't know. Am I cut out for this? Am I meant to be a doctor? Blah, blah, blah. She's like, stop that. Like, be serious. Like, this happens. Like, they
I
give
love
you
it.
all those attempts for a reason. So,
Yeah.
no. Let's replan, like, just go back to the drawing board, strategize, and then give it another go. I was like, okay. But at that point, I was still in the UK and I decided to do an attachment. So I did an attachment at Guy's and St. Thomas's in interventional radiology, which was really nice. It was a good distraction from my sadness, my sadness about not passing the first time round. And yeah, I met all these people that were really encouraging, and that's also kind of what sparked my interest in radiology. Like, I already had a slight idea that I might possibly want to pursue radiology, but just doing that attachment really helped me a lot. Yeah, so then left the UK, went back to Uganda, and then my mom suggested that I try a different academy because I had a friend who we had done the exam around the same time, and she had gone to this other academy. So I went to Samson's Academy in Dubai, and it was just a lot more convenient and more cost effective as opposed to coming all the way to the UK and spending those 2 weeks doing this academy thing. And honestly, the Dubai course was really great at that time. He had just opened it, so all the equipment was new. The class was really small. I think we were like 10. So we had like proper one-on-one, like one-on-one practice, and it was just a better environment altogether. And we had really good teachers. Um, yeah, so my experience at Samsung's Dubai Academy honestly was good. Actually, around that time, do you remember when the very first time that I got in touch with you was to ask you about the WAST program? Yeah, so around that same time, I had an interview for WAST, and that was the first time they had those interviews in Dubai as well. So all of that happened around that time, and then I went back home, did my booked had booked the second attempt for December. I booked it in December 2019. I booked it at that time because I was coming with my family, and my sister was also graduating, so it just worked out for everyone. So yeah, and this time I went in hard, like no distractions, no, like I was just practicing. And yeah, this time I felt a lot more confident. And to be quite honest, Samson's Academy in London it can get very crowded, but I find that if you ignore all the things that people say about it, the approach, I find that the approach to the exam that they give you is, for me, it worked out better for me. Just my own personal experience comparing two academies and me preferring this one despite all the
all the other things. Because I also went to Samson's,
yeah.
and for me, I guess it was a different time, and it was a bit. I had a different experience, but I still passed. So that's the difficulty with all this. Is at the end of the day, you still pass, but the process is
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
intense. So it felt like, to me, it felt like kind of being back in Uganda. The way the teaching was done, it was a bit harsh. It's like tough love. So I think
yes,
if you're going to go there knowing that possibly that might be the case. But
yeah,
also I never knew they had a Dubai option, so that sounds like it's really
yeah,
cool. But in the end,
yeah, it was.
you passed, and you'll find a lot of Africans there. I think that's another pro. There'll be a lot of Nigerians.
Yeah. Yeah, so I met a lot of Nigerians, a lot of Egyptians. I think the people that I practiced with, mainly Egyptians, Sudanese, Nigerians. So yeah, it worked out the second time round. But like you said, it was like if you've been to boarding school in Uganda, then you know. 'Cause that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like I'm being taught by a strict high school teacher.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you've been through a Ugandan boarding school, it doesn't phase you much. Like it does, it kind of phases you like this thing of really, this is what I'm dealing with here. Um, but it doesn't affect you as much as people from different countries who have had like who have different education backgrounds and all of that. Because for
Mm.
me, I was just like, you know what, suck it up. You can like just pick out what you need to do, like practice and just pass the exam.
Mm.
And yeah, thankfully, this time it worked out just fine. And yeah, I passed. Like I remember feeling such a huge sense of relief. Like I remember when I logged in to check my exam, I mean my result, I was freaking out. I just went to my mom to hold my hand
Oh, your
because
mom
I was
is like so sweet.
she really is. She really is. Like
And so supportive,
she's
like
been
you've
like
been in this together.
we literally, do you know, before I graduated, she already had a plan. She was like, okay, I've read about PLAB, I've read about the academies. Do you know she joined the IMG groups? She read about, like, she knew about these blogs, Manya Omar Alam, Nasir Khan. And she's talking to me about all these people. I'm like, who are these people? She's like, don't worry, I'll send you links. She knew everything like before I did. Because for me, before I graduated, my main focus was because my uni, you had to do an internship exam, then you had to do a graduation exam. And if you didn't pass the internship exam, then you're not graduating. So yeah, so I was focusing on trying to pass. I was trying to tell her, Mommy, can I actually graduate first? And she was like, of course you graduate. Like
Yeah.
there's no doubt about that. Like she had this, she's always had this
Then she looks ahead.
faith.
Mm.
Yeah. She has this faith for us both. Because I'm mostly a glass half empty person, but she's
Up
she's
to
very
his glass
yeah, very
and
optimistic.
overflowing.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so it's definitely because of her that I stuck with this process. Her support and also like her support in every way. Mainly financially, because there's no way I could have afforded the process myself. I didn't have a job. I was just fresh from school.
And
When she
emotionally
was
keep pushing you.
emotionally, yeah, she really pushed me. And when we checked that result, I, I, gay, like I actually cried because I was so happy. And she also had this sense of accomplishment. It was like we had been through the process together, and she was so happy, so happy. And yeah, it felt like a huge, huge relief. Just a huge weight lifted off our shoulders, and difficult, but finally, at least I'd passed the exam.
Passing after failing is even most, I think, is sweeter than
Yeah.
you had passed first time round. I thank you so much for coming because I think that there's going to be a lot of lessons to learn for other people. Because
Mm.
I love what your mom was saying that they give you 4 attempts for a reason. In fact, it's even
Yeah.
more than that. Even after you fail 4 times, God forbid you're out there and you've actually failed 4 times, you can still go and have another attempt. You just have to fill in some paperwork on the GMC website.
Yeah.
Contact them because I think you have to show that maybe you've gone through further training, like there's something
Mm.
different, and they should give you another chance. So don't
Yeah.
be up like Shamim was initially feeling like, oh, he should give up. And then her wise mom came in and talked sense back into her. Yeah,
Yeah.
on this journey, you need people supporting you also financially, number one, but also emotionally because it's tough. It's a long and it can be difficult.
Yeah. It's a real, honestly, like you really need the support because it felt like prepping for PLAB 2 was like doing internships, cramming it in like 3 weeks and practicing all these cases and all these stations. And it was a bit more challenging for me because I hadn't really, like, I only had 1 year of that internship where I was still kind of treated like a student.
And then what about the job? So you said when you were in Dubai, you had the worst interview. Did you get it?
Mm-hmm.
Then you got a conditional offer, I remember, right? At that point?
Yeah, yeah, I did. So, um, because I was meant to start in I think Feb of 2020. Yeah, Feb of 2020. That's the intake I was meant to go for. But at that point, I hadn't sorted out my registration, because COVID had started in China. And when I sent my documents for GMC registration, I had a laminated internship certificate. And they said that they couldn't verify that it was the original because it was laminated. And so they told me that I had to get in touch with the issuing body to verify. Yeah, to send them a verification saying that yes, they're the ones that issued this certificate and it's a true original and blah, blah, blah. What to the wise, don't laminate your documents.
What about the EPIC verification?
No, so Epic, I think for Epic, I had already done it. See, my forward-thinking mom, immediately I graduated. Literally the next day after my graduation, when we got the documents, transcript, and everything, I started the EPIC verification while I was still in China before we left to come back to Uganda after graduation. She was like, start it now. And at that point, I hadn't done all of that yet. My EPIC verification went really.
Your mom is so cool. So you can actually do the EPIC verification as soon as possible at any one point because it doesn't expire.
And the good thing with doing it at that time was that I could literally just walk into the school, like the office, and tell them, can you respond to this email so that Epic can verify? And that's literally what I did. Like after we sent off everything, I just informed them that there's an email from this thingy because you can track and see what step your verification is at. And then I told them, and they sent an email, verified everything, and that was done. And I remember I had already selected GMC as the body to receive the verification. So at the time when I finally applied for registration, all they had to do was just retrieve that. Thing is, even if you take off the lamination, it damages the original like any stamp, yeah, that's on there is no longer original. So if you've already laminated, just leave it. But if you haven't yet, just don't touch it, just leave it. So yeah. But yeah, so finally I got registered. I finally got in touch with my school to just let them know to verify with GMC about the internship certificate. It took a long time because everything was locked down. They were already dealing with COVID and the rest of the world hadn't yet. Yeah, but I think it took about 2 weeks and they eventually got it done. And then I was finally on the register early Feb, beginning of Feb. So I had to move my worst start date to August. So at that point, I had been really chill about applying for jobs because I was like, I already have a sure job. Like, I was like, I'm already appointable. I have a job. So after my registration, I'm just waiting for August and then I'll start WAST. Then COVID hit the rest of the world and they stopped WAST recruitment. So everyone that was waiting for placement, they just stopped. And there I was once again, like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And if you're in that Facebook group, International Medical Graduates in the UK, sometimes the stories are not very encouraging. Yeah. So it's just like, now me who doesn't have experience, am I going to get a job? I mean, I had no choice. I had to start applying anyway because I literally didn't have an alternative. Like I had to apply for a job, and it was a very depressing process, to be honest, because you get rejection after rejection. All I'd say is make sure you tailor your the application to the person's specification and the job description. You can't do like a one size fits all application and just keep sending and sending and sending. Like go to the supporting information and if they say they want a person who's like this, show how you exhibit those characters and what experience you have that makes you suited to the position. For me personally, quality over quantity in terms of number of applications, because a lot of people will say, oh, you have to apply like over 100 applications. You don't necessarily have to, because you can send out 200 applications and you still won't get anything. And yet somebody can send out 20 good quality applications, and they'll get like what, 4 interviews. And I know people who have done that.
Yeah.
And there are people who say, oh, they've applied for 450 jobs.
How
I'm
do
like,
you even
eh?
do
Oh,
that? I wonder, how do you even do that? Because I think
yeah.
you're probably just clicking and resending the same application.
So you have to take your time. Yeah. So eventually, after 6 months, I got 2 interviews. I remember my first interview was in September, and I had been applying from like April. So April was when they had sent the email. WAST had sent the email saying they're not doing recruitment. So that's when I actively started applying. So it took that many months for me to get an interview. Actually, the interview itself is a testimony because the day of the interview, it was raining a lot in Kampala. I remember I had loaded data on my MTN line, Airtel line, and my AfriCell line because I was like, I'm not taking any chances. If this gets off, I have this. If this like, I had a backup to a backup, like because I was like, I have to ace this interview. So I prepped, done the prep for the interviews. Then the day came. It's raining heavily. I joined because it was an online thingy. I joined the room. It starts, and then when we're like 5-7 minutes in, the network cuts.
Oh no.
It cuts. And I think it was a problem across all networks because I switched to MTN quickly. I switched to AfriCell quickly, and they were all really crappy. And by the time I joined the meeting, they had left.
Oh no.
They had left.
After 4 months, 4 to 6 months of looking for a job, and then you
I
have
get the interview.
you get the interview, and then the
Yeah.
Kampala internet disappoints you.
Yeah. Because it was really raining bad. So I think all networks were affected that day. So obviously I first just hung up and cried because I was like, the one chance I had, I cried and cried and cried. And then, of course, went to my mom, told her what had happened. And then she was like, it's okay, take heart, blah, blah, blah. But why didn't you tell us? Maybe we could have brought you, I don't know, a modem. Or I was like, it wouldn't have made a difference. Like
Yeah.
I loaded data on all lines just to plan for all these possibilities. And then after like an hour of crying, I was like, you know what? Sivida, wow. So I sent an email. I went back to the job description, and I looked for the contact person, and I called. I called them. Called the first time around, it went to voicemail. I called again, and then she answered. The HR person answered, and I explained who I was, and I was like, if there's any possibility, if there's any way I can please be given another chance, I would really be grateful. And then she said she'd speak to the consultants and get back to me. And then I sent an email to the lead consultant. I was
I love
like,
it.
this is my name. No, because I was like, guy, I've been applying for 6 months. This is the one chance I have. I'm not letting it go. So I sent an email, introduced myself, and then 2 days later, they sent me an email and they're like, okay, we're willing to give you another slot for an interview. Can you imagine?
Wow. Isn't
Isn't that good? Because I was like, wow, these busy consultants have actually agreed to interview me again. And it's not like I was a spectacular candidate or like had a shiny CV. All I had was internship and my degree and that clinical attachment. Like
and
it wasn't
determination.
anything special. Pardon?
And determination, and not agreeing
Yeah.
to give up and not giving up easily. Because you could have
Mm.
just cried and just moved on. But no,
Yeah.
you might find a way. Please, if you're
Yeah.
listening, be inspired, because me, I am. I hope you're feeling as
Because I was
inspired as
like,
I am.
I was just like, I've tried so hard. I've really worked hard at this. I can't just let go of this opportunity. And I think also I wanted it as a consolation for myself, just to feel better that, okay, at least I tried everything.
Tried everything.
And then Yeah. And when they actually got back to me, I was like, look at God. And then this time they actually said, you know what, how about we do it as a phone call
Mm.
since you have network problems? I was
Wow.
like, yeah. They gave me a time and day. Again, the day that they gave me for the interview, I had actually booked an ILS course and we were doing it in Chengeda, something by the European Resuscitation Council. They started doing like ALS and ILS courses, and I had booked the ILS course to try and boost my CV. And
Mm.
that was the day that they gave me.
Mm.
That was the time slot they gave me for for the interview. And I tried to speak to the organizers and ask them if I could
Take an hour out.
um
Mm.
yeah. And they were just like, it might be difficult, but maybe you can step out during like for lunch break, like take your lunch or something, and then do the interview. So that's what I did. I actually took the interview in my car. There was no other place that I could sit
But
to do the
there
interview.
was no video, so it was only audio.
Yeah, it was only audio.
Another blessing
And
as well. Them saying,
yeah,
because if it was video and you look like you're unserious, like you're just in your car, you don't even take it seriously.
yeah, true. So yeah, so at that point I had given them my AfriCell line, and the place where we were, there was no AfriCell network. But but again, because like God actually meant this for me, because before the interview began, this lady had texted on WhatsApp, like that number I gave them, a contact number I gave them. She texted on WhatsApp and was saying, we'll begin in this minute. We'll be giving you a call in a couple of minutes. And then I told her, I sent her a message quickly, can you call me on this number instead? And she was like, okay, that's not a problem. So they called me on MTN, did the interview, and like 30 minutes later, they sent me an email offering me the job.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, like,
The relief.
the
Meanwhile,
relief.
in
But
an ILS course, you are in an ILS
mhm,
course trying to
yeah,
boost CV for getting jobs. When actually
yeah,
you
yeah,
even need it, like you still got the job without it, which just goes through. If
yeah,
something happens for you, you will get it.
exactly. Like if it's meant for you, it doesn't matter how long it takes, eventually you'll get there. So yeah, that was the process of my first job. And it
Start.
was quite a process.
When did you start?
I was offered the job in September 2020, and then sorting out everything, getting the certificate of sponsorship, and then getting the visa. All of that went on till December.
Mm.
So I moved literally on 31st December. That's the plan. That's when I took my flight, because I was like, you know what? That's actually a good time. I'll get in the UK in time for New Year, New Me, like fresh start.
Yeah,
So
new
yeah.
job. Wow.
Wait, I left 30th and then I arrived here 31st. And then, um, so yeah, New Year 2021 found me in the UK. And then I was here 2021, 22, and now here we are, March, March 23. So technically 2 years and a couple of months.
Okay. So
So yeah.
it was such a journey. So thank you for taking us along. I think it's very encouraging for
Yeah.
out there because the journey might not be straightforward in life in general, but also in this thing
Yeah.
coming to the UK. If you want to come to the UK, it might not be straightforward. But eventually,
Yeah.
yeah. So now that you are here, um,
Yeah.
was it all worth it? What are the
Um,
mm,
what are the pros?
of living in the UK,
Of,
working in the UK? What would you say are the
um,
good things? Although I know for you, because you had already been here visiting a few times, it's a bit different for you than someone who's coming for the very first time, but still, what?
yeah. It was different this time around, because when you're visiting, it's different. It's like you're coming for like 10, 20 days tops, and then you go back. So it's not the same as when you actually move here. You have to find a place to stay. You have to actually start a life. And the time that I arrived was the worst possible time to relocate, but
And lockdown, I remember.
it was lockdown. Yeah, it was lockdown, and I was coming to Southend. I didn't know anyone in Southend. Like I had some family in London, but I was actually scared to like, can I go to them? Because COVID, we still had that fear about COVID. I was like, no, I can't go to them. if I'm off, if I've just come off an international flight and then they get COVID. So I was just like, I'll come to Southend directly. But I remember being really anxious. But then I found this group on Facebook called Tea and Empathy. It's basically just a group that it's just full of like kind people, like people in the medical field. And yeah, they all like they empathize with a lot of situations, give advice and all of that. So I remember asking one of the admins to help me share anonymously. And then I explained my situation, saying, I'm moving to this place. I don't know anyone. I need some help, like just any tips on what to look out for, how to survive. And like the love that I got, like the willingness of people to help. Like someone had even offered to come pick me up from Heathrow. These are strangers. They don't know me. And remember, I've posted anonymously, but they're like, OP can message me directly and I can give some advice. And I was just like, wow. And one of the consultants at that hospital also posted in that group and was like, I'm actually this and this consultant. This is my email. Send me an email if you need any, like if you need a friend or need someone to talk to. And I remember that gave me a lot of relief. When I finally got here, I got an Airbnb for the first couple of days. And then I went to hospital accommodation.
Because I think it's so beautiful. And I feel like somehow I find that, I mean, people in Uganda are nice, but I feel like we're usually nice to people we know. People are usually nice to people we know, and we seem to be a bit wary of strangers. But in my experience here, I find that people are generally nice.
Yeah.
They don't know you. So, for example, that group Tea and Empathy public group who are always posting their different situations and they always get a lot of help. So I think, first of all, if you're an IMG, join that group. Doesn't matter if you're a doctor or a nurse. So it's for health professionals. And then also, if you're in these groups, make use of them. Don't be a lurker, never saying anything. At least, even if you're shy to comment or to say your problem, at least post anonymously. People are going to help, because I find people are really helpful on these groups, even in like church, or because me, I go to church. I've found a lot of kindness from strangers. So that's one big pros that I've found in living in the UK. People are always happy to help, hold for you that door. Like when you feel that maybe if I'm traveling in London and I have like a baggy, maybe I'm by myself, or even if I'm not by myself, sometimes there's no lift. And then you have to take the baby up the stairs and in the buggy. There's always someone. I never even worry about it. I know someone will come and help me.
So reach out. Like you really have no idea how much people are willing to help. Like that there are people out there. Which was, it came as a surprise to me because, like I told you, I'm a glass half empty person, very pessimistic. So this, like, it came as a shock. I was like, oh my God, these people actually want to help. And it just gave me a sense of, what, I think I'll be okay. In case of anything, they're strangers that I can send messages to and they're willing to help. So yeah, like you said, one of the pros that I found living in the UK is they're really nice people. Not all of them, just disclaimer, but I think just generally speaking anyway, there's always like a kind person that's willing to help. And the other thing that I think the main thing that I would say is just access to things. I like the access to things like travel, online shopping, and just life's conveniences that I really like, that I feel that I wouldn't have been to access as easily if I was still in Uganda. And then the other thing, the most obvious thing is career-wise, this has opened more doors for me than if I had stayed in Uganda. Just to show you how it opened doors for me, I had decided to get my Ugandan license, and it was a struggle before I had my GMC license. I think any foreign medical graduate, any Ugandan who hasn't studied at home and has gone through the process of trying to get your license at home, they can testify and tell you there's a lot of bias that you have to fight. Just the whole process is not easy, despite the fact that
they make it so difficult.
Yeah, they really make it difficult. But after I got my GMC license, I went to the registrar I got my Ugandan license. Like he just co-signed, and like I didn't have to do any exam. I didn't like nothing. He just asked me, where did you study? And oh, so now you have a UK license. I was like, yeah. Like, oh, what have you been doing? Blah blah. And I explained, and he was like, okay. And he literally just signed, and he was like, you go downstairs, they'll give you a receipt, and you'll pay. And in like a week or two, I picked up my Ugandan license, and that was it. Like all because I had a GMC license as well. It became a lot easier because before I had been trying to chase um the registrar, the chief. You're getting numbers and you're getting advice from lots of people. And at some point I had given up. But then after I got this GMC license, I was like, let me just try again because I just always had this thing. At the end of the day, I'm Ugandan, and if anything backfires, home is where I'll always end up. So I was just like, I need to have, my license at home. Yeah. So yeah, that's another thing that it opened, the doors that it opened. Those are the three main ones for me is just quality of life is better and access to things, not having to worry about like healthcare. Like you've got free healthcare at the point of service. And then career-wise, you've got all these options. A lot of people who have, if you've trained in the UK or if you have UK work experience, then you're kind of more valued if you decided to move to other countries. Like if you decided to go to Australia and you've got your GMC license and work experience, it's also a lot easier than if you didn't have that.
In Canada.
So yeah, and Canada as well. But also other Commonwealth countries. For example, I had someone talking about how they're moving to Seychelles. I was like, what? That's random. And they're like, no, yeah, if you have a GMC license and you have your work experience, you can just go to Seychelles. You don't have to do anything. And I was like, look at that. Island living.
The world is your oyster now. Seeing that you travel a lot on your social media, so what are your feelings about life in general? Are you going to become an island doctor as well? What are your plans in terms of travel, work, specialty training?
So in terms of travel, honestly, travel for me is a really like it's a big part of my life. It's a necessity, and I've had this travel bug since I was since med school, and I do a lot of solo trips, and it all started with actually my very first solo trip was to Nairobi. On one of my breaks from school, I was at home. Most of my friends were busy, didn't have time to like hang out, and so I was just like, do you know what? I'm going to take a bus and I'm going to Nairobi. And I told my mom this, and she was like, who do you know in Nairobi? Like, what are you going to do? Because she was like, "Ani Bumani." I was like, no, no one. Where are you going to stay? I booked an Airbnb. What? And like, she just had this thing of, why? Like, why do you want to do this? And I remember it took a lot of convincing, like me convincing her, like, no, mommy, I'll be fine. Like, I'll go straight to the Airbnb and I'm not doing anything dangerous. I'm just literally going to explore somewhere new. She was like, you can wait. I'll even buy for you a plane ticket. You won't take the bus, which. I was like, no, mommy, you say that and then it won't ever happen. Poor thing. She finally gave in because like I was really determined. And I was using my savings, like my pocket money savings from school. So yeah, I took a bus, went to Nairobi and had the best time ever. Like I met another solo traveler and this other Kenyan who had just moved back to Kenya and she had been living in the US. So somehow we just all stuck together, had a lot of fun, and that's what just really set it off for me. And from then on, I decided if I want to experience something or like just go somewhere, I'm not going to miss out just because nobody else wants to go.
Or waiting for people on a group chat to
Uh-huh.
confirm
How many trips? How many trips never make it out of the group chat?
exactly. I love it.
So yeah.
And I guess also being in the UK makes it easier because it's much like cheaper to travel to most of the places in Europe, for instance.
Yeah, one of the conveniences I was talking about, when you're employed by the NHS, it kind of gives you this a bit of an advantage because they know you have a reliable job. So it's easier to get like visas or like a long-term Schengen visa. So you can just literally go, like the cheapest plane ticket that I have paid for was £5.
What?
Ryanair. Yeah.
Where?
Ryanair going to this town in Netherlands called Maastricht. Because I looked at the price, I was like, this guy's going to fly us in a Shivati. How can it be £5? Like, but no, it really was £5. But if you add on luggage, that's a different thing. But most of my trips, I make sure I only take hand like a cabin bag, so I never check in anything most times. Yeah, so just pack a little suitcase and on the go, or just have my backpack.
You're living the dream.
Well, trying to.
I think you've had guys, like there's lots of good things. Like Shamim here is living her dream life. You too can come to the UK and travel around, live your best life if you want to. But we don't want to lie to you and say like it's all good and there's nothing bad. So maybe for just the people to tell us out a video, you can tell us, Shamim, is there any con that you think is worth mentioning for people to be aware of?
I think the biggest one I'd mention is I think you just have to get used to doing a lot of things alone. Like if you haven't got family around, sometimes it's really challenging because as much as some of us enjoy our own company, at the end of the day, you still need people and you need a community, you need a support system. And that's not easy to build when you're new to a place. So sometimes it can get very lonely. Like I remember when I was moving into my flat and I had to build all my furniture myself. Like built my wardrobe, built my TV stand, built my bed, assembled my sofa, my table, everything. I literally did
Price.
single-handedly.
Yeah. No, like I feel like this applies whether you have a family or not, although it's probably worse if you don't have a family, like I mean your own nuclear family. But like having to do stuff yourself, like there are no kanyamas that you can help. I remember moving when I was in the UK. When I first arrived, I lived in London, and so then we moved from, we first were staying in a house share to then a studio flat, and then we had to carry things ourselves because it was walking distance. And I remember feeling like, what suffering is this? First of all, I was pregnant and I'm carrying things, like pillows and not heavy things. But still, there's that thing of everything becomes too much DIY.
Yeah, yeah. So those are the kinds of things I miss about home because I just stopped for a moment and I looked, I was like, wow, I've become Bob the Builder, like because I can't find, what the hell? Why am I doing all of this? I was just like, why am I struggling? But then it also kind of gives you this sense of pride, like when you achieve things and you're like, I actually got through this alone and I survived. And yeah, but that's definitely the hard part. Just you need a community. You need to make friends, and people who show up for you when like real life things happen. Because when you have an emergency, you can be independent all you want, but
Need
at some
people.
point you're going to need somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the hard part.
I would say that I think
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
abroad away from your social support, and like not knowing
Yeah.
as people, that's a big con. So
Yeah.
I made another video as well on how to deal with homesickness, which I will link up here.
So you have to really be intentional about just creating that community. So yeah. And I think a lot of people worry about maybe discrimination or like racism and things like that. And to be quite honest, it's not something that I actively worry about when I'm going to work. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's not, so far I haven't encountered like direct in my face racism. I mean, you'll most definitely become more aware of your blackness, but I think the fact that I survived 6 years in China. For me, this feels like this is nothing. This is normal. Like there's nothing here has shaken me or anything. Like I haven't faced anything that.
I think that's an important point you've raised. I went to China once and I remember feeling like, what is this? Like they had never seen like Black people. People would come and take
Yeah.
pictures of you. Like they would even
Yeah.
bow and point, and it was so
Yeah.
dehumanizing. For me, I was there for just 2 weeks at most. And I couldn't imagine people who had like my brother was there for like 5 years, or now like for 6 years. So yeah, I think this is nothing. Like because people are not going to be like
Yeah, because you know, like in China, people would pull out their phones in some places to take pictures of you, and you would see them, they would see you, see them, and nothing. They still go on like, oh my God, look at this black person. My friend group in China was so because my class was all international students, we had like South Africans, Americans, Canadians, Australians. So it was like a whole blend. Every time we were together, it was like, they have the whole mix, the whole we look different.
yes, like rainbow colors.
Yeah. So it was like, oh my God, picture, 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 picture. So yeah, after surviving that, actually, so by the time I left China, I just had this thing of I'm not ever going to live in a country where the main language spoken is in English, a country that isn't diverse enough, because I was just tired of that. Like I had a good university experience, I can't lie, but outside of university, the majority of the Chinese population still has those manners, you know? So yeah, so coming to the UK felt like this is like I don't stand out like that. I mean, there's still spaces where I'm the only Black female, but it's not like a big deal of like, oh my God, there's a Black person in the room. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm just another Black person in the UK. So I
Well,
like that.
you should
So
join the Black Female Doctors Association UK.
okay.
So if you're watching this, so by the time you're watching this, I think I will have been announced, but I am the IMG lead of the Black
Oh,
Female Doctors Association. So I think it's a space because there's a lot already against us. Number one, being Black in a predominantly white society, you have
yeah,
against you. Number two, being female, you have the patriarchy.
true,
Like
true.
you have
Yeah.
all this combination of things, and so it's like a space, I guess, for us to come together. There are events and different things that they're organizing. Join organizations like that. We also have the British Ugandan Doctors Association. You should join that as well. We have like things that we do. We have an annual dinner that happens, and it's quite fun. I attended the one before.
Okay.
Eat yummy food. Yeah, meet other
Yeah,
Ugandans.
yeah, doctors, yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually always nice to meet other Ugandans because all our stories are very different, but umna Uganda tabula, you know, like you can spot a Ugandan from a mile away. So the hospitals that I've worked in, I haven't met other Ugandan doctors, but there was a time I was in London and I met this Ugandan doctor and he's a cardiothoracic surgeon. He's a cardiothoracic consultant. Do you know how big of a deal that is? Because there are only 3 training spots in the whole of the UK for cardiothoracic surgery. So imagine how remarkable this guy had to be to get into cardiothoracic training. And now he's a consultant.
Wow.
I've forgotten his other name, but anyway, he's called Lawrence, and he was a friend of a friend, like someone who's like a mentor to me. So she was in the UK visiting. She's a doctor in Uganda, and this person is her OB. Like they were in the same class in med school, and so we met for drinks in London, and I met him, and I just remember being in awe. I was just like, wow, it's possible. Like don't let anyone tell you, no matter what specialty you want to pursue, no matter how competitive, like you can do it, no matter how long it takes. Like, because this guy just like I just remember feeling this sense of pride, just feeling like, oh my God, the 3 training spots in the whole country, and he's now a consultant.
This is why you also need to join our association because we have quite a few consultants as well. In the association, and some of them are training program directors of like their trusts wherever they are. It's like really impressive people, they've been here like 20 years, those kind of people. It's just that I guess they're not
Mm.
very active on social media,
Yeah.
but we're there. So which brings us to our last question, Shamim, which is about what are your
Yeah.
plans for training? Yeah, what training? Are you still thinking of interventional radiology?
I am. I still am. Although, so I've got two main specialties that I'm really interested in. So really loved radiology for a while and tailored my portfolio to radiology. And I also really like psychiatry. I definitely have plans of, so this year I applied to training and I'm still waiting for like the offers and the cycles, recycling and blah blah blah. If I get and so for this year, the MSRA, I didn't get the cutoff for radiology. The cutoff this year was 543, and last year it was like 520 something. So it's a bit of a big jump. But yeah, so thing is, I'm content with either radiology or psychiatry. Like they both.
Different.
I know. Do you know, every time I say this to people, and like my supervisor at work, and they were just like, "What? There's nothing in common. Like, what do you mean?" I've always wanted specialties that align best with my personality and things that I really have an interest in. For radiology, the thing that really interested me about it was I love photography. It just felt like, you know what? Photography, medicine, it meets at radiology. And then there's this whole other aspect of it, the interventional aspect of it. At some point, I wanted to do surgery. But that I think internship I was just like, there's no way, I'm not doing surgery. But with interventional, you can still do these non-invasive procedures. So depending on what offers I get this year, fingers crossed for psychiatry, if I'm happy with the location, I'll go ahead with that. If not, I'm just going to apply again next year and see. Yeah, like if I get the cutoff for interviews, for radiology interviews next year, maybe I'll do that. But yeah, I'm content with either one because I've explored both specialties and I literally would be content with either one. Like even long-term prospects and after I'm a consultant, just I'm happy with either one to be honest. But again, like you said, there's no rush. I used to have this timeline. I used to say, okay, I'm going to do training. I have to be a consultant by like 35, 36, and then this and this and that. But like, there's really no rush. There's really no rush because after you become a consultant, you're doing that for the rest of your life. Like, just enjoy the journey.
Thank you so much for that. And if anyone wants to contact you, if they have any specific questions for you, where can they find you?
To contact me, I would say my Instagram. That's the one I think I really keep up with. You can send a message request and yeah, just introduce yourself if you've got questions or if you need help with something. I'm happy to help. Or you can try Facebook as well, although to be honest, I don't keep up with it as much or check my messages as much. But that would be I wouldn't mind Facebook as well. So my Instagram is S is for 7 with underscores in between. And my Facebook is just Shamim Kanyange.
If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And yeah, and thanks for watching. Subscribe, everything. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks for having me.